Welcome to the Wall Street Lab podcast, where we interview top financial professionals and deconstruct their practices to give you an insider look into the world of finance.
Mentors can come in different ways and different forms. Listening to one podcast or listening to one interview or reading one book, is going to give you an insight. Having somebody that you can interact with on an ongoing basis to be able to see how you have developed and to see how you have interacted in the past and to try and help guide you. It's not essential, but for me, it is something that you are able to benefit from somebody else's wisdom. What's also important is to make sure that you have the right mentors. Having just anyone guiding you, clearly that's not the purpose of having a mentor. You don't necessarily have to have a direct interaction with them. So for instance, as I mentioned earlier on, I've read probably every single letter that's been written by Howard Marks. I used to read a letter which was called the Gartman letter, which was a fascinating read for getting trading insight and really having an understanding of how people who have been in the markets react. There are other types of mentors that you can have rather than having an interpersonal relationship with somebody. I think the difference that I found is when I was actually able to speak to somebody and sit down and have a coffee or sit down and have lunch, and you have a conversation which leads into it naturally rather than trying to force your ideas into, I've read this in a book, how do I apply it to myself? Or how do I apply it to my situation? I don't think any one piece of information can help you move forward in your understanding. I think it's the idea of being able to see how you develop and how you understand. My business partner, Sandy Koifman, was that man who had that interview. And at the time, he said to me, you don't want to be a trader, you want to be a portfolio manager. At the time, I didn't know what the difference was. That's the reality. It was a title on a page. But having that knowledge and that insight to understand the background and to see where you fit, and the knowledge of having run trading desks globally for Safra and alongside some of his sort of kind of fellow finance titans at the time and in the 80s and the 90s. It's that knowledge which allows people to provide some kind of guidance to you. And you don't necessarily have to follow it. But I think that if people are providing guidance to you and it's based on the historic involvement in a sector that they understand, then taking that knowledge on board and at least having it as an opinion for you to be able to listen to is invaluable.
And how do you go about choosing your mentors? How do you find the right mentor?
That's a really tricky question. And without wanting to sound like I'm quoting something from sort of a Harry Potter film or something, I think the mentors almost choose you. It's one of those situations where you normally will have a personal interaction with them either on a business or a personal basis. You have an affinity to be able to speak openly with them. If you're not able to speak openly and talk about sort of most subjects, it's very difficult for a mentor to actually be able to help and guide you. I think it's more a process of being able to speak to people and make sure that you keep those connections open, and then you can develop those relationships. It's not a one-stop. Tomorrow, Andy, I want you to be my mentor. I don't know enough about the fintech space. Please, I would like to learn from you. I mean, you and I have very good open conversations, and we chat about various things which develop and actually lead into other conversations. And I think that is a way of learning and actually having a mentor specifically. I'm just very fortunate that I worked with Sandy very closely for 11 years, 3 years as a client, 11 years working with him. And then I left, went off to do my own things, and we came back together again. A mentor doesn't have to be stood next to you every single day of your career or of your life.
That makes sense. And I think it really fits into what other guests told us about. You don't necessarily have just like one mentor figure, but you can choose from 1 to X amount of people.